A demigod born afflicted by an outer god of rot. A sage tortured to the brink of frenzied immolation. And a method of delaying their grim fates that serves as a connective thread between them. I welcome you, Tarnished, to join me, Zayf the Scholar, as I share some interesting details about Midra and Malenia that you may have missed, and consider how the influence of the outer gods can be resisted. Let's talk about it. The younger of the twin prodigies born of the union between Marika the Eternal and Radagon of the Golden Order, Malenia, like her brother Miquella, was born both blessed and cursed. On the one hand, Malenia was an unparalleled swordsman and an Empyrean with the potential to succeed her mother and ascend to godhood. But on the other, she was horribly afflicted by scarlet rot, the influence of an outer god that caused the progressive decay of her flesh. But fortunately for Malenia, her brother Miquella wasn't content to sit idly by and let his sister rot away. And he eventually developed a way to slow the progression of the scarlet rot by crafting special needles out of unalloyed gold. The description of Miquella's needle reads, "One of the unalloyed gold needles that Miquella crafted to ward away the meddling of outer gods, capable of subduing the flame of frenzy if inherited, allowing one to cheat fate and avoid becoming Lord of Frenzied Flame. However, the needle is as yet unfinished, and can only be used in the heart of the storm beyond time, said to be found in Farum Azula. The related item unalloyed gold needle, meanwhile, is described as a ritual implement crafted to ward away the meddling of outer gods. It is thought capable of forestalling the incurable rotting sickness." But how exactly is a needle supposed to prevent someone from rotting away anyway? For a long time, I assumed it was just sort of injected into the skin and worked via unexplained video game magic. But a recent observation by Reddit user Corrupt Power actually suggests that Miquella's needles may have been used in a more literal sense. He points out that as far back as Elden Ring's story trailer, it appears that Malenia's non-prosthesis left arm is shown inlaid with a metallic woven pattern. And I must have watched this trailer hundreds of times, so it kind of blew my mind that I never noticed this. So huge props to him for pointing this out. But I was actually unable to find any good videos or high-res photos documenting this on Malenia's in-game model, so I decided to go and have a look for myself. And sure enough, we can indeed find this golden woven texture on her left arm, hand, and fingers, as well as on her right leg starting below her knee and extending a bit up her thigh. And I was actually surprised by just how obvious this woven gold is once it's pointed out. But I guess considering she's all over the place during her fight, we can maybe give ourselves a pass on not noticing sooner. And you can let me know in the comments if this is a bit of a stretch. But I wonder if when Malenia talks about dreaming about her flesh being a dull gold, if perhaps she was describing a nightmarish vision of a future where her entire body had to be held together with Miquella's stitching.
I dreamt for so long. My flesh was dull gold, and my blood rotted. Corpse after corpse left in my wake.
In any case, I think this golden woven texture strongly implies that Miquella's needles were used literally as sewing needles, to graft unalloyed gold into Malenia's afflicted flesh in order to slow down the scarlet rot eating away her body. And interestingly, in the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, we actually find another character whose grotesque fate is being delayed with stitching. Which brings us to the Lord of Frenzied Flame, Midra. If we have a close look at his body, we find that not only is it left with horrifying gaping wounds, which are presumably left from his inquisition by the hornsent, but many of these holes have been loosely stitched together with thread of some kind. These wounds can be found on his neck and legs, but primarily on his back. So perhaps Midra's ability to withstand his injuries for as long as he did was due in part to having his wounds somewhat treated with these loose sutures. It's completely speculation, but I can't help but imagine Nanaya stitching up Midra's wounds as she entreated him to endure. Going back to the description of Miquella's needle, I wonder if it's purely coincidental that it's this very item that's described as capable of subduing the Frenzied Flame if inherited. It seems that somehow needles and stitching are tied to the resistance of destructive outer forces, like the outer god of rot and the Frenzied Flame. So perhaps it's more than a coincidence that, as pointed out by Sekiro Dubi, the barbed shaft that the hornsent used to impale Midra is referred to internally in the game files as a rune needle. This seems to solidify the idea I've seen floating around the community that the sword piercing Midra is functioning both as a torture device designed to inflict pain, as well as a seal of sorts, preventing the Frenzied Flame from igniting. And I wonder if this focus on stitching and resisting outer influences is perhaps metaphorical. These outer forces, like the outer god of rot and the Frenzied Flame, seek to tear apart the fabric of reality imposed by the greater will, be it through rot, burning, or bleeding. But the damage they inflict can be forestalled by needles, tools capable of sewing the damaged areas back together. But what do you guys think? I'm looking forward to hearing your interpretations and thoughts in the comments. At the very least, I hope I brought some small interesting details that are easy to miss to your attention. And I'd also like to mention that while doing research for this video, I actually found a thread on Twitter by the amazing user LittleChurchLore, who noticed Midra's stitches way before I did, and I highly recommend checking out his interesting thread on the subject for an alternative interpretation. You can find links to his and all the other posts I mentioned in the video description. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. It really helps out my channel a lot, and I genuinely appreciate it. And hey, I'd also appreciate it if you considered supporting my work by becoming a patron, a YouTube member, or buying me a coffee. Thanks a ton for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.